Thanks for tuning in today. I'm Dr. Nick, the Incrementalist. Join me as I seek out the small incremental changes being applied in other industries that we can learn from and that can be applied in healthcare. Can these changes bring immediate value, but also add up to the big improvements and revolution we need in healthcare? Come along with me to explore the possibilities. My innovative guests from around the globe have used small incremental improvements to achieve their moonshot. And today, I'm delighted to be joined by Marck-Arthur Clerveau. He is the Innovation Manager from the Medstar Inventor Services. Mark, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Dr. Nick.
So for the benefit of the listeners, it would be helpful just to get a little bit of history to you, your background, and how you arrived at what I consider a really exciting role as an innovation manager.
You bet. You know, if I told you that I kind of just fell into this career, I would be telling the truth. As a young person, I thought I had my life goals pretty set. I thought I was going to be an electrical engineer full time. The goal was to get my master's in EE. But something happened my senior year where I kind of just didn't want to be part of the traditional engineering role. And so I decided to take a look at a program that I felt like could combine my experience, technical experience as an engineer, and combine my experience as a leader and team building that I developed as an undergrad student. And so there was this program called the MSITE program at UMass Lowell, stands for Masters of Science in Innovation, Technological Entrepreneurship. And it was advertised to me as pretty much an MBA for engineers. The classes focused on new product development, project management, and then the class that really did it for me was the Survey for Intellectual Property course. You know, it focused it on patents, copyright, trademarks, and trade dress, and using all these mechanisms to protect new products and new ideas. Shortly after that program, I was lucky enough to join the University of Maryland, College Park Office of Technology Commercialization, where I was a physical sciences technology analyst, where I identified university inventions for research and looked at the patents and marketed those technologies. And about 2 years after that, I joined the Medstar Inventor Services office.
So it's interesting. It was actually a course, and I love that idea of this MBA for engineering. So part of me thinks that maybe we should have more of those courses, not just for engineers, but for other people. Was that also the constituents of that class, or was it just purely for engineers in that instant?
It was mainly technical folks in engineering, but the class and the framework, I guess, got so popular. By the end of the program, I believe they were actually launching a healthcare version of the same course.
So UMass really leading the way in terms of innovation and helping us get better innovation in healthcare. I love that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, UMass Lowell is doing a great job up there.
So you step into University of Maryland, and you've now moved into this Medstar Inventor Services. Tell us a little bit about that. That's in fact how we met, and you shared some of that. And I was really intrigued by some of both the successes, but also the journey to this point.
Sure. For those who aren't really familiar with Medstar Health, we're about a 10-hospital system here in the Baltimore, D.C. region, nationally known clinically for some of our ortho work, cancer, GI. Part of the Medstar system is what we call the Medstar Institute for Innovation. And so back in 2009, Ken Samet, in partnership with Ken Samet's our president and CEO of the hospital system, and Mark Smith, who is our Chief Innovation Officer and Director of the Institute for Innovation, realized that, there was a bunch of untapped intellectual capital here in the hospital system. And so they wanted to find a way to tap into that and not necessarily exploit, but share with the community a lot of the ideas and products that our Medstar associates have been thinking about, and finding a great pipeline to get those things to market. And so Medstar Inventor Services was developed to work hand in hand with Medstar associates to basically transform their innovative ideas or discoveries into commercial products. And so I help do that.
So as you think about that, ultimately your employees are probably best placed to actually have insights on how to improve, but in many instances, sometimes frustrated. I mean, I see this not just in healthcare, but in other industries where, they can see a solution but don't have a pathway. This is almost like a suggestions box on steroids, no?
I could see why it could look like that to some folks, but I think what folks don't really understand sometimes is it takes a lot more than just having an idea to get to be successful or to be commercially successful. For example, a lot of our ideas have to be vetted. And so, the world is a more connected place now, and there's a lot of folks who come up with great ideas who don't realize other folks are coming up with the same great ideas. And so we help, parse that through and take those technologies and shepherd them through and do our due diligence to make sure we're in a position to be successful commercially with these ideas. But you bring up a very interesting point about kind of having a suggestion box on steroids. We experienced some of that here at Medstar as well. We took a look about 2 years ago at our invention portfolio and realized that we do a great job talking to doctors, researchers, administrative staff. They do a great job of connecting with us. But what we really realized is we had an issue getting and receiving ideas from frontline nurses. And we totally recognized that they were busy, providing care to their patients. But we created this interesting program called Innovations to address some of that.
Tell us a little bit about that. I mean, I agree 100%. I mean, I think the world's full of great ideas, but actually delivering that into something that's useful. And the example, albeit imperfect, but it's one that always struck me, was the whole videotape. And, for some folks, they go, what's that? I understand. But, we used to watch content on videotape, and VHS was essentially what emerged, but Betamax was, right, by all accounts, a far superior solution. But they didn't execute well enough to be able to deliver it. And, it sounds very much like you're trying to nurture and find the VHSs or even find the Betamaxes and nurture them through. Can you share some examples?
Sure. One of the examples of a technology we kind of shepherd through, we focus on the clinical problem and make sure there's a clinical need. And so, currently in sports right now and today, there's a large investment in, the search for rapid real-time concussion assessment tools. And obviously concussions are complex and there's many factors that go into that. What we found was that, these teams are looking for something that can be reliable, quick, and portable. And so what we decided to do, a bunch of Medstar associates co-developed a rapid screening test, essentially for concussions, portable via an iPad with a hand grip device attachment, which analyzes, multiple cognitive functions like concentration, predictive activities, and fine motor skills within 3 minutes to provide a kind of a yes and no answer, binary answer, if that person is experiencing concussion symptoms or not. Now, you would think this is a great tool to be out there and be easily to be shepherded through. However, there's multiple things out there that, folks need to take in consideration for, especially kind of the environment this device would be in and things like that. So I think that's a great example of one that we shepherd through.
So I'm interested to know, when you say Medstar Associates, that sort of encompasses the whole universe of Medstar. What did that original sort of collection of folks look like? What was it that contributed to sort of coming up with that concept? Who were the people, and why was that the case?
That's a great question. I would probably have to go back to around 2009 when the Medstar Institute for Innovation was created. Our motto is catalyzing innovation for the advancement of health. But if you asked Ken Samet a couple of years ago if he knew what the Medstar Institute for Innovation was going to be when we created it, it wouldn't be so innovative. But I like to call the we call it MI2 for short. I like to call MI2 pretty much a greenhouse, an incubator for operational and clinical initiatives. So, for example, we have a large research group of human factor engineers. I think it's the largest group of human factor researchers in healthcare, where they focus on usability studies for the FDA, people trying to get medical devices certified, as well as a lot of interesting research on electronic medical records and related errors with those. Another example of an initiative spun out of MI2 is our Untitled group, which is our simulation and training education lab. It deploys a blending learning model of, interactive learning, even 3D VR. I think they're developing a kind of VR game to get into serious gaming as well for training. And then, the traditional high fidelity simulators that train our clinicians. And so there's plenty of things that, MI2 is involved with. We're heavily involved in the digital health space, trying to figure out what's next with PGX, telehealth. There's a bunch. And so I think that was kind of the spark of the search for a lot of these innovations.
So you talked a little bit about Minovations. Tell us about that program. What is that, and what are some of the things that are going on in that space?
Certainly, I would love to. Primarily, Inventor Services is trying to look at products to get out in the market. And so 2 years ago, we were just trying to do a self-check on ourselves and see how we're doing with Medstar Associates. And if we're reaching everyone, in a 10 hospital system, that's very difficult. But, we are up to the task. And so what we realized when we reviewed our portfolio of technologies, that we did a great job connecting with doctors, researchers, administrative staffs, but frontline nurses seem to be missing. And again, we realized that they were busy providing health care to their patients. And so we really wanted to figure out why. Initially we thought, we can put up a great quick app that they can pull out on their cell phone and they can submit ideas. 2 seconds later, we found out nurses aren't allowed to use their cell phone. So we took a step back, decided to, design, think, empathize with these nurses. So we pretty much shadowed about 100 hours in the ED, ICU, surgical center, behavioral health, 12-hour shifts, overnight shifts, where we just wanted to see what the nurses were already doing. And we found that these nurses are actually highly innovative and creating a lot of just-in-time solutions. And so it was pretty exciting to see that there was a lot of innovation that was untapped still within the system. And so we decided to create this innovation marketplace for Medstar Associates, like these nurses, to share these solutions and make their jobs easier and better.
So what are some of the examples of that in play, in the program so far that you're particularly proud of or excited about?
I'm glad you asked that question. There's one innovation that is my absolute favorite. I'm a big fan of American football, and my favorite player is Tom Brady. And if anybody watches football, we know Tom Brady has a device on his arm called a quarterback sleeve, and that device enables him to look up plays quickly when he needs to do certain drills. So Joyce Berkeley, who is a nurse at one of our hospitals, has something in common with Tom Brady. She uses a quarterback sleeve, and I'll tell you why. So working in an outpatient surgery center, Joyce has to prepare very nervous patients who are about to enter surgery. So while prepping them, providing, their IVs and sourcing information from them, she has to kind of match up 3 sources of different information, one from the patient, one for the medical record, and then one for what we call an OR sheet. This particular sheet needs to stay at the nursing station. And so typically nurses, when they're trying to match this information, they'll use sticky notes, write it down on a piece of paper, write it on their hand or whatever. And that's not necessarily the greatest. You can lose a sticky note and you can potentially show off some patient health information that wasn't supposed to be shown. And so what Joyce actually did and kind of innovative was to actually take that quarterback sleeve and use that as a way to transfer that information, where she'll lift up the cover of the sleeve, write down the information, close it over, and that way it's protected. Simple thing, but very innovative and very helpful to her day to day. If you think about a nervous patient and you're going into surgery, the last thing you want is a nurse all up in the, medical EMR cart and writing things down and not necessarily paying attention to you. This enables Joyce to do that.
So for those of you just joining, I'm delighted to be joined by Marck-Arthur Clerveau. He is the Innovation Manager at Medstar Inventor Services. We were just talking about what I term the adjacent possible, and in this particular instance, he was talking about American football, not soccer as it's called here, or football as it's called in the rest of the world. And something I learned, the quarterback sleeve, I never knew that. I'd always seen them looking at this thing, but didn't know that even had a name. So when she came up with that idea, what did you do? Go to the NFL and say, can we buy a bunch of these quarterback sleeves for our nurses?
So obviously we don't have every nurse equipped with a quarterback sleeve. And so what we do with the innovation marketplace is provide a way for these nurses to go to this website, see Joyce's idea, and then there's a button there for them to inquire to get one, and we'll provide it to them as inventor services.
So actually that's an internal thing. What about for people externally? Do you sort of share these innovations? How does that whole process work as you sort of go through these discoveries from folks all the way through to actual usage?
We promote the Innovations website internally here as a system because it's still currently a pilot program. However, the technologies we tend to discuss externally are kind of more of our inventions, such like Brain Force. Last year we had a record amount of patents issued, and so those are the type of things that we share kind of outside marketing.
Fantastic. So as you sort of think about innovation in general terms, tell us a little bit about how you foster it. I mean, not everybody's innovative, or maybe they are. I mean, do you think everyone has this innovation bug in them, or is it something that you can learn? How do you nurture? How do you think about that?
A great colleague of mine once told me innovating and inventing is very hard. It's like akin to baseball. You don't hit a home run every time you make a swing. But to answer your question, fostering innovation, I think it's programs such as Innovations, right? We had a situation where we had a group of associates that we knew had a lot of experience and with frontline technology and ideas. However, they didn't feel like they had a place to kind of do that, or they weren't aware that there was a place to do that. And so Innovations kind of is the sparking conversation to allow them to do that, to allow them to know that, the system's here to listen to them. The system's interested in their ideas for products and things like that. And so, I don't know about yourself, but I like to go where I'm celebrated. And so if my job is celebrating my ideas, celebrating, my work ethic, I think that's somewhere I would rather be. And I would think about more things to be celebrated. So more ideas, more inventions, more innovations.
So this is in the healthcare setting. Can we do this in other places? Is there an opportunity to sort of push this out into other areas, make it happen earlier even?
Certainly. And I would point to UMass Lowell, and I think they're doing a great job with what they're calling their Difference Makers program, which is essentially an entrepreneurship-focused program for all students within the university. And actually, what they do is grab these students pretty early. Ralph Jordan, Dr. Ralph Jordan over there, he actually does a great ideation session. And it's one of my favorites, where he essentially takes a box of trash. And I had the pleasure to work with him one summer doing this. And what he takes is a box of trash. You'll find tissues, plastic spoons, just random things, Starbucks cups, and dump it on the table with these newly, freshmen coming through orientation and saying, I need you to solve climate change by 2020 with these items on this table. And he says straight out, I don't care if this is a blue sky idea, if it's impossible, or if it's really technical or feasible. Write it down on this piece of paper and we're going to discuss it. And the ideas that came out of these were amazing. And I'll tell you why it was specifically amazing. UMass Lowell is kind of known as an engineering school. However, we have various great majors and programs within that university. One is that sound recording technology, which I love. However, you had students from all different different majors contributing to trying to solve this issue. And the ideas were so creative, from kind of creating an underground bridge for transportation for the river, or harnessing that same river with Starbucks cups to generate energy. It was amazing.
So it's interesting. I mean, when you think about that, the sort of what's the small piece of activity that's driving that? Is it the bringing together of people? Was it the sort of shock of somebody tossing out a bunch of garbage onto the what sort of drove it? Because it clearly introduced, I think, clear passion and insight, but what was it that sort of really drove this innovation in those individuals, do you think?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I would have to say it's probably focused on that there's people listening. I think it's kind of simple like that, I feel like there's many people out there who, have a great idea in their head, but kind of are afraid to share it. Don't want to kind of be, shot down or saying that's a stupid idea. I think the key to this exercise that Ralph Jordan was able to facilitate was straight out right then and there. He said, there's no dumb ideas. I want all these ideas. And so the fact that you are in a safe space to provide an idea like that, I think was a great facilitator. And I think, Innovations does that as well.
So I think you pick up, and I hear a lot of these threads in this show from folks, is that, safe seems the wrong word, but maybe it's the right word. Finding this environment where, people are open to, not everything's right. To your point of the baseball analogy, and, you can't always be right, but that doesn't make you failure or wrong. It's part of the learning experience. I think that's just fascinating. So unfortunately, we're close to time. And I just one last question, maybe an example of a small incremental change that you've seen that's had a really good positive impact?
You know what? I'm going to go back to this Innovations program. We started celebrating what nurses are already innovating. And, we collected about 20 innovations, but this led through 3 new inventions, 1 new patent application, and a winner of a Cool Ideas contest. And so it's been highlighted at the hospital it's currently at, and it's a great example for nursing magnet recertification. So I think the Innovations program is just that.
So Innovations is a sort of small change that's really introduced a fantastic sort of expansion of ideas within the Medstar system.
Yes, I would agree.
Fantastic. So once again, we're out of time, but it's been a real pleasure talking to you, Mark. I want to thank you for sharing some of your insights, obviously your passion around this innovation, and a little bit of your journey. Thanks for joining me today.
I very much appreciate it, Dr. Nick. Thank you.
Thanks for joining me today. Do you have any better ideas, or have you found a small incremental change that's brought about a big improvement in your world? Let's continue the conversation on our hashtag, The Incrementalist, or share with me at DrNick1 on Twitter. You can find more information about the show on our program page at healthcarenowradio.com. And tune in next time to hear my discussions with leaders and innovators from around the globe who've revolutionized their space by using small incremental improvements to achieve their moonshot. I'm Dr. Nick, the Incrementalist, and I'm starting a revolution through evolution.